The sudden discovery, hook and suspense. The deep silence of space was interrupted only by the hum of the Vanguard, a human warship patrolling the outskirts of the galaxy. The crew had grown used to the quiet, knowing that for months, no enemy ship had dared to challenge humanity's presence in the sector. But today, that silence would be shattered in a way they never expected. Commander Elena Drake stood in the command center, her fingers lightly resting on the console. She had seen it all: pirates, hostile alien races, and space storms. Yet, today felt different. The atmosphere on the bridge was tense, the air thick with the uncertainty of a new mission. "Anything unusual on the radar?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with a sense of unease. The officer manning the radar panel, Ensign John Harris, quickly ran his fingers across the controls. "Nothing yet, Commander. Same empty sector as usual. No signs of enemy vessels. Just the usual asteroid belt up ahead." Elena nodded but couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She glanced at the star maps flickering across the holographic display. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Suddenly, the radar let out a sharp beep, followed by a series of rapid clicks. Ensign Harris looked up, his face pale. "Commander, something's coming through. It's not from our fleet. The signal's different." Elena's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the console. "What do you mean, different?" It's an unknown frequency, Commander. It doesn't match any known alien tech. It's like they're broadcasting on a private channel." "Any sign of life?" Elena asked, her voice becoming sharper. The ensign's hands moved frantically over the controls. I can't get a clear reading on their ship's ID. It's not any fleet I've ever heard of." The bridge crew fell silent. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, their calm demeanor slowly turning into nervous anticipation. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The unknown was always more dangerous than what they understood. Could it be a malfunction? Elena asked, her eyes locked on the ensign's screen. "No, Commander. It's too strong. It's coming closer. Very fast. And I don't think it's an accident." A tense silence followed as Elena processed the information. An unknown ship, approaching at high speed. If it wasn't an accident, what did it mean? Was it an attack? A new ally? Or something far worse? "Raise shields. Full defensive readiness," Elena ordered, her voice low but commanding. "Everyone, stay alert. We need to know what we're dealing with." Within seconds, the Vanguard's shields powered up, their faint blue glow surrounding the ship like a protective barrier. The hum of energy coursed through the ship, and the crew could feel the intensity rise. "Commander, the signal's getting stronger. It's definitely coming our way." Ensign Harris's voice shook slightly as he spoke. Elena's eyes narrowed. She moved closer to the radar panel. The unknown ship was on a direct course for them. There was no mistake about it. Whatever it was coming for them. "Get a visual," Elena ordered. Ensign Harris quickly activated the ship's long-range sensors. A moment later, the image of an enormous, dark silhouette appeared on the display. The ship was unlike anything they had ever seen, huge, menacing, and surrounded by a flickering energy field that made it look almost unreal. "It's massive," said Lieutenant Sasha Lorne, a weapons officer, her voice full of awe. "What kind of ship could be that size?" "I don't know," Elena said, staring at the screen. "But it's not human. This could be an invasion force. Get ready for anything." The unknown ship loomed closer, casting an eerie shadow over the Vanguard. The crew stood frozen, their eyes locked on the screen. For the first time in months, they were about to face an unknown enemy, a threat that could be unlike anything they had encountered before. "Prepare all weapons," Elena ordered, her voice tight with anticipation. "We can't take any chances. If they attack, we fight back with everything we have." The ship's guns powered up with a deep rumble, the sound of energy coursing through the cannons. But Elena knew that weapons wouldn't be enough if they didn't know what they were dealing with. Her mind raced. How could they fight something they couldn't understand? Were their weapons even strong enough to defeat this mysterious vessel? As the minutes ticked by, the tension on the bridge grew unbearable. The unknown ship was only moments away from entering their firing range. A flash of light appeared on the ship's hull as it powered up its own weaponry. Alina's heart pounded in her chest. The moment of truth was almost here. "Commander," said Ensign Harris, his voice strained. They're preparing to fire." The crew braced themselves. Everyone knew that the next few moments would decide everything. Would they survive this encounter, or would they fall to this new, unknown enemy? Elena clenched her fists. "Stay calm, everyone. We're humans. We've faced worse." But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger and more terrifying than any of them could imagine. First contact. The Vanguard's crew stood frozen, staring at the dark shadow on the screen. The unknown ship was now within striking distance, and the tension on the bridge was unbearable. The crew had prepared for this moment, but no one could have predicted how strange and terrifying it would feel. Commander Elena Drake's eyes were locked on the screen as the massive alien vessel came closer. It looked like it was made from a dark, metallic substance, with strange symbols glowing faintly across its surface. The ship's shape was unlike any human vessel, sleek but menacing, with sharp angles and an unsettling aura. "They're almost within range," Lieutenant Lorne said, her voice tense. "What should we do, Commander?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing. She had ordered the shields to be raised, but could their energy field hold against whatever weapons the alien ship might have? Was it even an enemy or something else entirely? She couldn't afford to make a wrong move. "Prepare to fire if they make the first move," Elena finally said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "But hold your fire until we know what we're up against. We need to understand their intentions." The crew nodded, their fingers hovering over controls, ready for action. The silence on the bridge was deafening. The only sound was the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the radar. The unknown ship moved closer, its massive size growing larger with every passing second. Then suddenly, the ship's energy field flared brightly, a powerful pulse shooting out from its hull. The Vanguard rocked as the pulse hit the shields, but the human ship held steady, thanks to its advanced technology. "What was that?" Ensign Harris asked, his voice shaking. "Are they attacking?" "I don't think so," Elena replied, squinting at the radar. "It looks like they're sending a signal." The alien ship wasn't firing weapons. Instead, it was broadcasting a strange energy wave, aimed directly at the Vanguard. Elena's heart raced. What could it mean? Was it a message? Or a way of marking their presence? "Try to decrypt the signal," she ordered. "Find out what they're saying." Ensign Harris worked quickly, his fingers flying over the console. His eyes narrowed as he tried to make sense of the alien transmission. I'm not sure, Commander. The language isn't anything we've encountered before. It's not even similar to any known alien dialect." A cold sweat began to form on Elena's forehead. The crew had prepared for a confrontation, but nothing had prepared them for this, an enemy whose intentions were completely unknown, communicating in a language they couldn't decipher. Suddenly, a deep, booming voice echoed throughout the Vanguard. It wasn't coming from the ship's speakers, but from the very air itself. The voice was strange, like the sound of a distant thunderstorm rumbling across a dark sky. Yet it was clear, and the words, though incomprehensible, carried a sense of urgency. The crew jumped back, their eyes wide with shock. Elena's hand shot up. "Turn it off. Now." But before anyone could react, the voice faded into silence, leaving behind a deep, unsettling quiet. "What was that?" Lieutenant Lorne asked, her voice shaky. It was like they were speaking directly to us. "I don't know," Elena admitted, feeling a chill crawl down her spine. "But we can't ignore this. We need to figure out what they want." The alien ship moved even closer, now less than 100 kilometers away. Alina felt a knot in her stomach tighten. The time for waiting was over. She needed to make a decision, and she needed to make it fast. "Open a channel," Alina commanded. "We're going to respond." Ensign Harris hesitated. "Commander, are you sure? We don't know what we're dealing with. They might attack us the moment we try to communicate." "I don't care," Alina said, her voice firm. "We can't afford to ignore them. If they're trying to talk, we need to listen." Harris nodded and began transmitting a signal toward the alien ship. The crew waited in silence, their eyes glued to the screens. Would the enemy respond to their message, or would they be met with an attack? Moments later, the unknown ship sent another pulse toward the Vanguard. This one was different. It wasn't a forceful strike, but a gentle wave of energy that washed over the human ship. The pulse was oddly calming, as if trying to soothe the crew's growing tension. Suddenly, the alien vessel's shape began to shift. The sharp edges of the ship softened, and the eerie glow that covered its surface dimmed. It was almost as if the ship was waiting. Alina felt a strange sense of hope. Could this be some kind of peaceful first contact? But just as quickly, that hope was replaced with caution. The ship may not be hostile, but Alina knew better than to let her guard down completely. She ordered the crew to remain alert and ready for any sudden moves. The communication channel was still open. Alina stood tall, determined. "This is Commander Alina Drake of the human warship Vanguard," she said clearly. "We are not your enemies. We come in peace. Please respond." The seconds dragged on, and the crew held their breath. Would the alien vessel respond? Would they find themselves face to face with something humanity had never seen before? And then, just as it seemed they would get no reply, the screen flickered. A series of strange symbols appeared, flashing across the radar, followed by a single word in bold, glowing letters. "Human. The battle begins." The word "human" flashed across the screen, lingering for a moment before disappearing into the void of space. The crew of the Vanguard stood in stunned silence, unsure of what to make of it. It wasn't a greeting or a threat, just a single word, like a mark of recognition. Commander Alina Drake's heart raced as she stared at the screen. The silence felt suffocating, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. Was this an invitation to negotiate, or a signal of something darker? "We need to know what this means," Alina said quietly, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "Ensign Harris, run a full analysis. See if you can pull any additional information from their transmission." Harris's fingers danced across his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. I'm not getting anything new, Commander. Just that single word, human." And then silence. Alina's mind raced. She had expected some kind of message, but not this. Every instinct told her something was wrong, but there was no immediate threat. Yet. "Activate our forward weapon systems," Alina ordered, her voice hardening. "Prepare for a defensive response. We don't know what this means, but I won't risk the lives of my crew." The hum of energy filled the bridge as the ship's weapon systems powered up. The crew moved quickly, preparing for the worst. If this was some kind of trap, the Vanguard would be ready. Seconds later, the alien ship made its move. A flash of light erupted from the enemy vessel, followed by a massive energy pulse. It wasn't a direct hit, but the Vanguard shook violently, throwing the crew off balance. The lights flickered as the shockwave reverberated through the ship's hull. "We've been hit," Lieutenant Lorne shouted, gripping her console. "Shields are holding, but the impact was strong. That wasn't just a warning shot." Alina's eyes widened as the ship's sensors picked up something horrifying. The pulse hadn't just damaged the Vanguard's shields, it had also disrupted the ship's communication system. They couldn't reach the outside world, and for a moment, they were completely isolated. "Alina, we need to fight back," Lieutenant Lorne said, her voice urgent. "We can't let them disable us completely." "I know," Alina replied, her tone cold with determination. "All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Open fire when in range." She didn't have to say more. The crew knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mysterious encounter anymore. It was an attack. The first move had been made, and now the Vanguard had to respond. The Vanguard lurched to the left, darting out of the enemy's firing path. But the alien ship was faster than expected. It tracked the human ship with precision, firing a series of energy blasts that tore through the empty space between them. Alina felt her stomach tighten as each blast missed by mere meters. "Captain, we're being followed," Ensign Harris said, his voice trained. "It's like they know exactly where we're going." Alina's mind raced. What kind of technology did these aliens possess? They had been one step ahead of the Vanguard since the moment the battle started. Was this a simple show of force, or was it something more? "Return fire," Alina commanded. The Vanguard's guns lit up with a brilliant flash of energy. The blasts flew toward the alien ship, but the force field surrounding it absorbed the attack like a sponge soaking up water. "It's no use," Lieutenant Lorne said, frustration in her voice. "Their shields are too strong. We're not making a dent." Alina gritted her teeth. This wasn't good. The human weapons had no effect on the alien ship's defenses, and with each passing moment, the enemy grew closer. Another blast came from the alien vessel, this one powerful enough to rattle the entire ship. The Vanguard's shields flared brightly before absorbing the hit, but the force sent waves of panic through the crew. They couldn't keep this up forever. "Captain, we've got incoming fire from a secondary ship," Ensign Harris shouted. "There's more of them." Alina's breath caught in her throat. More ships. She thought they were dealing with one enemy, but this was only the beginning. "Brace for impact," Alina shouted. The crew scrambled to hold on as the ship shook from another blast. This time, the Vanguard rocked harder, and the lights flickered once again. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, and Alina could hear the crew members' worried voices as they fought to stay in control. "Engines are at 50%, reported Lieutenant Lorne. "We can't keep outrunning them at this rate." The ship trembled again, but this time it was different. A series of flashes appeared on the sensors, enemy ships, emerging from the darkness like vultures circling their prey. "They're everywhere," Harris gasped. "There's a whole fleet out there, Commander." Alina's eyes widened as the magnitude of the situation hit her. This wasn't just one enemy ship, it was an entire invasion fleet. The alien forces had been lying in wait, and now they were ready to strike. "Prepare for a full engagement," Alina ordered, her voice firm despite the fear creeping up her spine. "We're not going down without a fight. Give them everything we've got." The Vanguard's weapons powered up once again. Alina knew this might be the last chance they had to turn the tide in their favor. But with the enemy fleet closing in, the odds were stacked against them. The battle was just beginning, and the humans would have to fight harder than ever to survive. The hidden threat. The Vanguard's hull shook again as another blast from the alien fleet slammed into their shields. Sparks flew from the control panels, and alarms blared throughout the ship. The bridge crew scrambled to keep things under control, their faces pale from the strain of the relentless attack. "Shields at 40%, Captain," Lieutenant Lorne shouted, her voice tight with urgency. "We can't take much more of this." Alina felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The enemy ships were coming at them from all sides, their weapons more advanced than anything humanity had encountered. The Vanguard's shields flickered and sputtered as they struggled to keep the ship intact. "Get us out of here, now," Alina barked. She gripped the edge of her command chair, watching as the radar showed no fewer than a dozen alien ships, closing in from every direction. The crew worked quickly to maneuver the Vanguard, trying to dodge incoming fire. The ship lurched violently as it darted to the left, narrowly avoiding another pulse of deadly energy. Alina's heart pounded in her chest. She had never faced a situation like this before. What had started as a simple patrol was now a desperate struggle for survival. "Commander," Ensign Harris said, his voice low and filled with disbelief. "I'm picking up a signal from the enemy fleet. It's not just a standard military transmission. What do you mean? Elena asked, her eyes narrowing. The frequency is too complex. It's like they're sending a coordinated message to someone else. Elena's mind raced. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a well-organized operation. The alien fleet wasn't acting like a group of random attackers. They were connected, working together. And worse, they were sending a message. But who were they communicating with? Can you decode it? Elena asked, her voice sharp. Harris's fingers flew across the controls. I'm trying, but it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The encryption's advanced, too advanced. I can't get through it. Then we need to know what they're planning, Elena said, her voice low and determined. We need to get close enough to get a better read on their communications. Get ready for a covert operation. Lieutenant Lorne's eyebrows furrowed. Are you suggesting we approach them directly, Captain? Elena nodded grimly. We don't have much of a choice. We're already losing ground. If we can get close enough, maybe we can infiltrate their systems, learn more about what they're planning, and find a weakness. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but they knew what had to be done. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for humanity's future. Ensign Harris, set a course for the heart of the enemy fleet, Elena ordered. We're going in. The crew worked quickly, setting their course toward the enemy's flagship. As the Vanguard moved deeper into the enemy's territory, the alien ships continued to fire on them. The Vanguard's shields flickered but held, protecting the ship from the worst of the barrage. The crew's focus was unwavering. They couldn't afford to fail now. Suddenly, the Vanguard lurched to the side as another hit landed squarely on their left wing. The ship groaned, and a sudden jolt of panic ran through the crew. The damage was getting worse. The Vanguard was starting to show signs of stress. Hull integrity at 60%, Lieutenant Lorne reported, her voice tight with strain. We need to pull back, or we'll be out of the fight in minutes. Elena's jaw clenched. She couldn't retreat. Not yet. Hold steady. We're almost there. The alien fleet loomed large ahead, its flagship now in view. The massive vessel looked like an enormous, floating fortress, bristling with weaponry and surrounded by smaller ships. It was intimidating, an impenetrable wall of alien technology. Approaching their flagship, Ensign Harris reported, We'll need to disable their defenses to get close enough. I'll take care of that, Elena said with resolve. Lieutenant, prepare the EMP weapons. We're going to disrupt their systems. Lorne nodded, her fingers moving quickly to activate the EMP system. Ready, Captain. On your command. Elena stared at the enemy flagship. This was their chance to strike back, to buy them the time they needed. If the Vanguard could disable the enemy's systems, they might be able to turn the tide of the battle. Now, Elena said, her voice steady but fierce. Lorne fired the EMP weapon, sending a powerful pulse of energy toward the flagship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the enemy ship's defenses flickered. Its weapon systems powered down, and several smaller ships in the fleet lost their energy fields. A small victory, but it was enough to give the Vanguard a fighting chance. We've got their shields down, Lorne said, her eyes wide with relief. Now's our chance. But as the Vanguard moved closer, a new wave of alien ships appeared from the darkness, flanking the Vanguard on both sides. It was a trap. The enemy had been waiting for them to make a move. We're surrounded, Harris said, his voice shaking. There's no way out. Elena's eyes narrowed as she realized the true scope of the threat. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a full-scale assault on humanity's future. The aliens had been planning this for a long time, and the Vanguard was just the first step in a much larger plan. But Elena refused to back down. We fight. We survive, she said, her voice filled with fierce determination. For humanity. The unexpected strategy. The Vanguard was trapped. Surrounded on all sides by alien warships, its engines sputtering from continuous damage. Elena knew that a full-scale fight would end in disaster. The alien ships, though intimidating, were not what worried her the most. It was their numbers, their coordination, their relentless pursuit that made this battle feel like an unending nightmare. "Captain, shields are at 20%. The EMP pulse we used has only bought us a few minutes," Lieutenant Lorne said, her voice strained as the hum of the ship's weakening shields filled the air. Elena's mind raced. Retreat was no longer an option. There was no place to run. The enemy fleet was everywhere. If they didn't act fast, they would be completely overwhelmed. Their ship was beaten, but it wasn't done yet. "I have an idea," Elena said suddenly, her eyes gleaming with determination. She turned to the tactical officers. "Lieutenant Lorne, I need you to prepare the ship for a high-speed evasive maneuver. Ensign Harris, bring up the enemy formation. We're going to use their own strategy against them." Lorne's brow furrowed. "What exactly do you have in mind, Captain?" "We're going to break their formation, but we can't do it head-on. The only way to survive this is to exploit the one thing they don't expect." Harris quickly pulled up the radar display, showing the enemy ships closing in. The alien fleet was tightly packed, their ships in a near-perfect formation. If they made any aggressive move, they would be surrounded. But that's exactly what Elena was hoping for. "Ensign, give me a route through their weak point, the gap between the smaller ships at the rear of their formation," Elena ordered. "We're going to slip through." Harris hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" "At this speed, we'll be an easy target." Elena nodded firmly. "That's exactly why it will work. They won't expect us to break formation and make a run for it. And if we do this fast enough, we can get to the outer perimeter of their fleet. Once there, we can launch an attack and confuse their strategy." Lieutenant Lorne looked up from her console, understanding the risky gamble Elena was proposing. "If we break through their formation and make it to the outer edge, we'll have the element of surprise. But, Captain, the Vanguard is barely holding together. One direct hit could finish us off." Elena met her officer's gaze with unwavering resolve. "We have to take that chance. It's our only shot. We'll either escape and regroup or take out as many ships as we can while we have the advantage." The bridge crew nodded in agreement, their nerves steeled for the dangerous maneuver ahead. They didn't have time to second-guess. It was now or never. "Ready, Captain," Lorne said, her fingers moving to the controls. "Let's do it," Elena ordered. The Vanguard shot forward, its engines roaring to life. The ship sped toward the gap between two enemy vessels, narrowly avoiding blasts that rang out from the surrounding ships. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the alien ships closing in from both sides. Each moment felt like an eternity. The crew had no choice but to trust the strategy. As they approached the narrow gap, Elena gripped the armrest of her chair, watching in tense silence. This was the risky part, the part where they could easily get caught in crossfire. But the Vanguard was fast, and the alien ships were slow to react. The ship zipped through the gap, and for a brief moment, they were free from the encroaching wall of enemy vessels. "Now launch the decoys," Elena commanded. Lorne fired a series of advanced decoys, designed to emit false energy signatures that would confuse the alien ship's tracking systems. The decoys scattered in multiple directions, drawing the enemy's fire away from the Vanguard. The enemy ships hesitated for a moment, thrown off by the sudden surge of false signals. It was the opening Elena needed. "Prepare the forward cannons," Elena ordered. "We're going to strike while they're distracted." The Vanguard's guns powered up, the energy crackling as the crew prepared to unleash everything they had. Elena's fingers tightened on the armrest. "Fire," she commanded. The cannons erupted with a brilliant flash of light. The Vanguard's shots hit two smaller alien ships, sending them spiraling into the void. The shockwaves rippled through the formation, disrupting the enemy fleet as they struggled to reorganize. The Vanguard took advantage of the chaos, quickly breaking through the perimeter and into open space. The sudden attack sent waves of confusion through the enemy ranks. They weren't expecting the humans to fight back so fiercely, and the Vanguard's unexpected assault threw them off balance. Alina knew this was only a temporary success, but it bought them precious time to regroup and make their next move. "We've broken through, Captain," Ensign Harris reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "We're outside the main fleet. We've created a gap." Alina let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Good. Now, we use this time wisely. We need to gather intel and find a way to cripple their fleet." The bridge crew let out a quiet cheer. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time in hours, they had a chance. They had broken free from the enemy's grip. And now, with their strategy working, Alina knew they had to strike fast before the aliens could regroup and counterattack. But as Alina looked out into the blackness of space, she knew that the fight was far from over. This was just the beginning. The enemy fleet was vast, and they would be back with a vengeance. "Keep your eyes open," Alina said, her voice grim but resolute. "They'll be coming for us. We have to be ready." A shocking revelation. The Vanguard drifted in the cold expanse of space, momentarily safe from the swarm of alien ships that had been closing in. For a few precious seconds, the bridge crew could breathe easier, though their faces remained tight with the knowledge that the danger wasn't over. Alina stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the radar and the distant horizon of space. "We're clear for now," Ensign Harris said, though his voice carried a tone of caution. "But we're not out of the woods. The enemy fleet is regrouping. They're not far behind." Alina's eyes narrowed. "We don't have much time." "Commander, the decoys worked, but the fleet is organizing again," Lieutenant Lorne added, glancing up from her console. "We need to figure out their next move, or they'll have us cornered again in minutes." Alina exhaled slowly, her mind racing. The fleet's regrouping wasn't a surprise, but it also meant they couldn't rely on the same tactic again. They needed an advantage, and fast. "Let's figure out what we're really up against," Alina said, her voice firm. "Harris, get a scan of their flagship. I want to know everything about that ship, its power systems, its weak spots, and most importantly, its communications." Ensign Harris didn't hesitate. "On it, Commander," running a deep scan. As Harris worked, Alina paced the bridge, her mind replaying everything they had encountered so far. The alien vessels were unlike any enemy they had faced. Their technology was far beyond humanity's. But there was something else, something hidden beneath their attack patterns. Then, the scan results came in, and what Alina saw nearly made her heart stop. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange," Harris said, his voice almost incredulous. "There's a faint, encrypted signal coming from the flagship, but it's not just communication. It's more like a directive." "A directive?" Alina asked, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Harris adjusted the display. "I've been able to isolate a few fragments of the signal. It's a command structure, orders being given to the entire fleet. But these orders are strange. They aren't just about attacking us. They're about something else, something they're not telling us." Alina's stomach tightened. She felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice, looking into a chasm of uncertainty. "What are they hiding?" "I'm not sure, but the language is complex," Harris replied. "There's something about seeds and harvest." The word sent a chill down Alina's spine. What could they possibly mean by that? Were they talking about humans as resources? Were they planning to harvest them? "Keep working on that signal," Alina said, her voice strained. "We need to know what it means. We can't go into another battle blind." As Harris continued to decrypt the data, Alina glanced at the rest of the bridge crew. Everyone seemed to be on edge, their eyes flicking nervously between the screens. The uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on them all. Suddenly, Harris spoke again. "Commander, I've got it. The fleet. It's not just here to conquer. They're here for something specific, and we're part of it. I think they're preparing to wipe out humanity, and use our resources for something much bigger. What do you mean? Lorne asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. Their fleet is here to harvest, Harris said, his eyes wide with horror. But not just humans. They're taking everything. They're preparing to strip entire planets of life and resources, and Earth is one of their targets. Alina felt her breath catch in her throat. She had known the invasion was serious, but it was beyond anything she had imagined. They're planning a mass extinction, Alina said, her voice low and steady. But why? Why Earth? What makes us a target? It's not just Earth, Harris said, looking back at the screen in confusion. It's the whole solar system. They're targeting the resources, the energy, the technology, and they plan to strip everything down, like harvesting crops. Like seeds and harvest, Alina repeated under her breath. A cold realization washed over her. This wasn't just a war. It was an extermination, and the aliens had been planning it for a long time. Alina turned to her crew, her face set with determination. We can't let this happen. We're going to have to fight harder than ever. If they're using us as a resource, then we need to make sure they don't get what they came for. The crew nodded in agreement. They had no choice. The aliens weren't just a threat to their ship. They were a threat to humanity itself. If they were going to stand a chance, they needed to find a way to stop the invasion before the entire solar system was lost. Ensign Harris, do we have access to their communication networks? Alina asked. If we can disrupt their signal, we might be able to buy ourselves some time. I can try, Harris said, already working on his console. It'll be tricky. Their encryption is beyond anything we've seen, but I think I can hack into their systems. If I can get a foothold in their network, we could disrupt their command structure. Do it, Alina ordered, her voice low and intense. Time's running out. As Harris worked furiously at his console, Alina felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. She had to make the right decisions, for the crew and for humanity. There was no going back now. But the thought of what might happen if they failed was too terrible to imagine. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of Earth and the entire human race rested on their shoulders. The final stand. The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly before them, a vast, silent void that seemed to mock the tiny human ships attempting to hold their ground against the seemingly unstoppable alien fleet. Commander Alina Drake stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her eyes scanning the radar as the enemy fleet moved into position. The countdown to humanity's last chance had begun. We've got one shot at this, Alina said, her voice calm but firm. If we fail, Earth is as good as lost. The crew of the Vanguard was grim but resolute. They had fought hard, and they had uncovered the enemy's terrifying plans. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned. Now, it was time to make their final stand. Ensign Harris' fingers flew over the controls. I've gained access to their communications network, Commander. I'm transmitting a signal disruption. It should interfere with their command structure for a short time. That's all we need, Alina replied. We'll hit them while they're vulnerable. Let's make it count. Lieutenant Lorne was already preparing the ship's weapon systems. We've only got one shot with the remaining power. If this doesn't take out their flagship, we're going to be sitting ducks. Alina's jaw clenched. It has to work. The alien fleet had spread out into a battle formation, preparing to strike the Vanguard once and for all. Their massive flagship loomed larger on the horizon, its weapon systems fully powered up and ready to fire. We're in range, Harris said, his voice steady despite the pressure. I've disabled their long-range comms. They can't coordinate with the rest of the fleet. We got a few minutes before they realize what's happening. The crew braced themselves as Alina gave the order. All weapons, fire on the flagship. Full power. The Vanguard's cannons erupted, firing a concentrated beam of energy at the heart of the alien flagship. The blast hit its shields with a powerful jolt, causing the massive vessel to shudder. For a moment, Alina thought they had succeeded, but the flagship's shields held strong. flickering but not failing. "Damn it," Alina muttered. "We need more power." Ensign Harris looked up, eyes wide with fear. "Captain, their flagship is deploying more smaller ships. They're surrounding us. We can't let them close," Lauren said, her voice tight. "If they get too close, we won't be able to fight them off." Alina's mind raced. The battle was spiraling out of control. The Vanguard was too weak to fight off the alien ships on its own. But they still had one last card to play, a plan that was dangerous, even reckless. But it might just work. "Get us in close," Alina commanded. "Right next to the flagship. We'll make a direct assault on their core systems." Lauren didn't hesitate. "Aye, Commander." Engaging high-speed maneuver. The Vanguard lurched into motion, darting toward the heart of the alien fleet. The enemy ships fired relentlessly, but the Vanguard's agility allowed them to dodge the blasts, narrowly avoiding destruction as they approached the massive flagship. The closer they got, the more intense the enemy fire became. The ship shook violently with each passing hit, and the crew held on as the Vanguard neared its target. "We're almost there," Lauren shouted. "Take out their core," Alina commanded, her voice like ice. "Now." Lieutenant Lauren fired everything the Vanguard had left. The full force of their weapons slammed into the flagship's central core, hitting it with devastating precision. The flagship's shields flickered and faltered, then finally gave way as the blast struck home. For a moment, time seemed to slow. The flagship trembled, its massive form shuddering as if in disbelief. Then, with a mighty explosion, the heart of the vessel ruptured. The blast sent shockwaves rippling through the surrounding ships, disorienting them and sending smaller vessels spiraling into chaos. "We did it," Lauren cried, her face breaking into a smile. "The flagship's gone." Alina allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The Vanguard had struck a crippling blow to the enemy's fleet, but there was no time to celebrate. The remaining alien ships were regrouping, furious and determined to avenge their fallen flagship. "Ensign Harris, can you disrupt their weapons systems?" Alina asked. "We need a window to finish them off." "I'm on it," Harris said, typing rapidly on his console. "I'm injecting a virus into their control systems. It should cause a temporary malfunction in their targeting systems." The crew watched as the alien ships continued to close in, their weapons powering up once more. Then, just as they prepared to fire, their weapon systems began to flicker and fail. "We've got it," Harris shouted. "They're blind for the next few minutes." Alina's eyes hardened. This was their chance to finish the job. "All weapons, full power. Let's end this now." The Vanguard's cannons roared to life again, this time with unrelenting force. The remaining enemy ships, now vulnerable and disorganized, were no match for the Vanguard's firepower. One by one, they were destroyed, their ships tearing apart under the relentless barrage. When the last alien ship finally exploded in a brilliant flash, the crew stood in stunned silence. The Vanguard had emerged victorious. The alien fleet had been decimated. Alina looked out at the remnants of the battlefield, the vastness of space stretching out before her. She felt a weight lift from her chest, but she knew this victory was just the beginning. Humanity had been spared, but the war wasn't over. There were still other threats out there, other battles to fight. "We did it," Alina said softly, her voice filled with quiet pride. "We saved Earth, but we have a lot of work ahead of us." The crew of the Vanguard exchanged looks of exhaustion and relief. The battle was over for now, but they knew that humanity's place in the galaxy had just been solidified. The aliens had underestimated them, and now the message was clear. Humanity was not to be trifled with.